Okay, it's working.
Okay. All right. So, Halima, you good?
Yes. Can I actually start? Because I actually have to leave and I won't have access to my computer.
Okay, let's go ahead and start. You want to go first?
Yes. Can I go first, please?
Yes, you can.
Okay. So, I peer reviewed Christy. Christy, I think you did a really good job. I'm trying to pull it up really quick. Um, did you get a chance to look at my feedback?
I did not.
Okay. It's opening for me. So yeah, I feel like that you followed the structure of the layout very well. I think you were just missing the heading. Uh,
Okay.
yes, for literature review.
Yes.
Yeah. Um, and some of your color of
Uh-huh.
your some of your ink color, like for your some of your references, it was a different color.
Okay.
Yes. Um, and some of your references that you had in the body of your paragraph, I didn't see in the final part of the paragraph.
Okay.
I mean, of the reference part. Does that make sense?
I'm not sure. You mean at the very bottom?
Yes.
Okay, I think what I've done is that's my references for the whole thing. And so I've just been adding on to it and not changing it each time.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what that was.
Okay. But other than that, it looks pretty good. Just a few grammar mistakes. Like I think one of your reference, the name should be capitalized and it wasn't.
Okay.
First letter. Um,
Yeah, it's a foreign name and
yes.
that was not capitalized. And so I looked at it and I looked at it like on the book and everything and it's not capitalized. So I left it the way it was because I didn't know what you do with that.
Okay.
That was kind of confusing to me too. I was like, okay, this is what you want.
Yes. Okay. Okay. But other than that, everything else looked pretty good.
Okay. Did you have another one for either of us that you did?
My other one was for Frida.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Well, I'll go ahead and do yours, Halima, if that's okay.
Yes.
Okay, so I have that the candidate is accomplished in researching and providing an annotated bibliography and online tools. Um, the candidate included 3 literature reviews and 6 reviews of online resources. An area of strength was the variety of best practices that the candidate and the PLC reviewed. Um, I put for the weakness, I said the candidate is emerging in the area of including data that illustrates and supports that research-based strategies will be used to address the need. Consider including maybe a figure that illustrates one or more of the best practices in the annotated bibliography.
Yes.
Maybe even for those like online sources, there may be some kind of data that you could include there.
Okay.
And in the description of the analysis of best practices, maybe you could include a description of why specific practices were eliminated to further support your explanation of the figure and of the analysis that you guys did as the PLC. Um, then I put for the leadership, because there are no references to graphic organizers that the PLC used to analyze the potential impact of the best practices discussed by the PLC, the candidate is emerging in this area. So you might want to put some kind of visual added in there that supports your leadership during that time. I know one thing that I noticed that Tamara did was she had added pictures of during the PLC. Not that it has to be, that necessarily, but something that shows
So I did
what you
the agenda. So the agenda, you saying I need a little bit more than the agenda?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So, um, and then everything was written in a professional, formal language. I thought you might want to look back over at your font and style of the text to make sure. I think the same thing that I did. Maybe we copied and pasted one of those things that one of the references, citations, and it was in a different font maybe. So
Okay.
looking back over that. There were a couple of minor spelling or spacing issues. One of it, for example, is said academic instead of academic, and then
Yes, that's
basic
the name of it. I'm sorry.
in math instead of in math. So,
Academic is the name of the program.
oh, okay. Well, good then. That's good to know. Yay. And then everything else, everything was structured logically and organized, and maybe removing links from the citations. I kind of wondered when we put it in task stream if that was something that we needed or not. So that was the only other thing.
So you're talking about in the reference or for the annotated bibliography part?
Just removing it. You can go on there and right click and it'll remove the actual link from it so it doesn't show up blue.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. So Tamara, did you have Halima?
I did have Halima as well. Are you ready, Halima?
Yes. Can I say something before you move on to me? Because I didn't have Christy's feedback pulled up. It was taking a while to pull up. One more thing, Christy. In the area of weakness was there were only 2 online resources. Was that correct?
That there was only 2. No.
9 online resources, and I think there's supposed to be 3.
Yeah, there is supposed to be 3.
And I only saw 2 for yours. So there were 9 online.
Yes, I went back and I added it. I think after you did that, because I didn't realize that. I couldn't find my notes. So, but I did go back and add it.
Okay, great. Okay. All right. I'm ready, Tamara.
Okay, so I had Halima and Frida, so I'm going to go ahead and do Halima's review. I thought the task was aligned with the content and you did complete the necessary research for the bibliography. You did a good job of presenting the information and the resources on several digital platforms that you all had planned to implement, including Class Dojo. The only question I had about these as far as how are you going to track the data for some of the resources you selected? That was just a question in the back of my mind.
Okay.
The rubric weakness is that you do not address prompt 2 at all, where it says that you need a graphic organizer to represent the PLC. I would revisit that.
Okay.
It says that, I think your narrative somewhat demonstrates leadership. It does not include any graphic organizers to address prompt 2. There are no references to how the PLC will impact the identified need. And, I would include some other further artifacts to support the fact that we have the meeting and the PLC and demonstrated leadership. Very similar to what Chrissy was saying. So I just include something, because if you have a best practice, then I guess they're looking for the implementation of it and what that would look like if you had to visually represent it to a group.
Okay.
And then, of course, the mechanics and grammar. You do use formal language. There are some grammatical errors and some run-on sentences. I think you should consider varying your sentence structure. A lot of your annotated bibliography entries begin with "in this article" or "this article." So just kind of switch that up a little bit. And then for your organization, I think you followed the template very closely, with the exception of just the omission of prompt 2. And you use APA with minor errors.
Okay.
So
I appreciate your feedback.
I
said I appreciate your feedback.
Did you have any questions before I moved on?
I did not. No, it was very clear.
Okay. Christy, who was I the other person you were providing peer feedback to?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. All right. So, Ms. Tamara, I put that the task content is aligned with the course content that supports the impact of the identified need for providing reading comprehension intervention in building literacy skills for grades 9 through 12. That was very clear. A strength in the text is the inclusion of a wide area or variety of literature that has been reviewed. That you were proficient in providing an annotated bibliography and online tools to cover the best instructional practices. And another strength is the inclusion of a graphic organizer to reflect the best practices from the research. What I put for a weakness was that the task is developing and showing the potential impact the best practices will have once implemented. There's a lack of data that illustrates that impact. And this is something I didn't even realize because I don't think I had it in mind as well. I think I somehow just completely missed that. But having some kind of graphic that shows what we predict that impact might be. And I put that the candidates should also consider including a description of why each of the sources were reviewed, what merit they served for consideration, just a sentence for each one, why, what, like, how were they to benefit to meet that impact. In addition, the candidate is developing on utilizing data to specify need and evidence that research-based strategies will be used to address the need. For leadership, I put that leadership is shown in the candidate created a graphic for the PLC members to analyze and evaluate best practices, and had a working session that's clearly depicted in the photos that you included that shows active participation of the PLC members. And then just for mechanics and grammar in the first paragraph, there was a sentence in there, and I thought you might want to modify that sentence. It begins with rather and has a comma. And I thought that as it was currently read, it didn't form a complete sentence. Maybe it would be better fitted to make a compound complex sentence with the one before it. So you might want to go back and look at that and just check it out. Everything else, structured in a logical manner. It's well organized. Subheadings were clear. Citations are correct. Same thing with the citations. I thought you may possibly want to remove the link so that they don't show up blue and just, or the standard black all the way through. I'm not sure. I hadn't really heard from them for us to do that, but I didn't know. I think it looks better throughout the whole thing if they are, but I don't know if that's something we have to do. We might want to ask that in class.
APA 6th edition says you leave the link.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good to know.
I had to buy a manual because I'm not familiar with APA. So
Yeah.
So you have to leave the link.
Okay.
Right.
So yes. But thank you. Thanks. I will definitely go back through and work on that for about an hour today. I also provided feedback to Frida, even if she's not present on the line. I think there's some merit still discussing the work. So I'm going to do my feedback to Frida very quickly. Frida's task was aligned with the course content, and she did use external sources appropriately. She did complete the necessary research to formulate the annotated bibliography. Her rubric strength was she did a good job of presenting the information, and she included various sources in the bibliography. She did also reincorporate her student reading performance data presented in task 2, her figure graph. It is still hand done though. And then, of course, the rubric weakness is she does not include any graphic organizers to adequately address prompt 2 of the task. Though the research focuses on reading intervention and instruction, she doesn't mention what those practices are by name. So it's kind of assumed that the author, the audience knows which intervention instruction practices she's referring to.
Okay.
Which can be worked out if she just goes back and names them. The narrative somewhat demonstrates leadership. She doesn't include any graphic organizers. There are no references to how the PLC will impact the identified needs. And then, of course, she really needs to include some further artifacts or timelines to demonstrate leadership that the PLC actually occurred. There are no notes either, or agendas. And then, of course, grammar and mechanics. It's not the same font coloring throughout, so that's something that she might want to look at. She also should, consider varying her sentence structure because her paragraphs begin the same way um, for the reader. And then, of course, she does closely follow the template, and the evidence is easily located. However, there's very little of that. And the one figure that she does have is not labeled via ADA.
Okay. Well, maybe she can watch the recording and then get that feedback.
Yeah, I give mine quickly too. So this is for Frida. Her feedback for task 3. Yes, the task content is aligned with the course content. The author did a good job of staying on topic and supporting her decision with facts from the literature review. Areas of strength is a resource represent tools to support teacher and student and annotated bibliography that is featured in the narrative. The resources are evidence and illustrates resources for best practice. The area of weakness is there are only 2 online resources that she has in her annotated, and it's somewhat demonstrated. She has evidence that she did research best practices. And like you said, she did present the finding, but it's very little evidence of it. It's written professionally and it follows the rubrics. There are some grammar mistakes such as spacing and run-on sentences. Also, the indents in her reference section is off a little. The evidence narrative is mostly structured in a professional manner. Headings and subheadings are clearly presented and easy to locate. There are 2 paragraphs underlined under best practice. Not sure if that was intentional or not. And the structure of the narrative follows the guidelines of the template that was provided. The headings and subheadings are clearly presented. The format follows APA format with the author and the author cited evidence correctly. However, there are some of the sources in the body of the narrative that does not show up in the reference section of the narrative. And that's my feedback for Frida.
Okay.
Hey.
Well, I think we've all done it for the good of the group. Were there any other questions?
I think we're good.
Okay. Good luck, ladies, especially if you don't have those graphic representations. They kind of stumped me a little bit.
Yeah.
But, we're just moving forward, and I hope y'all have a fabulous day. I'll be at working if you need any questions or if you have any. So, but I know you all have very exciting days planned. The Renaissance Fair, and then we have the actual fair. Yeah.
Well, we'll be working later this evening.
So,
I've been working on this last night trying to get it done, so I knew I wasn't going to have that much time today to work on it. So
yeah.
I've been up all night.
Well, y'all have a good week.
Okay, well, thank you. You do the same.
All right.
Okay. I do have one question before we end. So when the representation, like I have like a Google slide that I used in the meeting. So like how do I copy like how do I put that into the paragraph? Do I just, because it's a slide, it's a PowerPoint.
You could do a screenshot of it.
Of like the main, doing all the slides or just like the introduction slide?
You could do the introduction, or you could just do like a couple of them. You know how you can switch the screen and you can see multiple at the same time, and then do a screenshot of that?
Okay. That's what I was trying to figure out. Okay, all right. Thank you.
All right, ladies. Have a good week.
Okay, you too.
Bye-bye.